Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's Breaking History, or this Breaking History Extra, I should say. Breaking History Extra. So I don't know if this is the last Breaking History Extra we're going to do, Gordon, or do we have next week as well that we're going to be also doing this second show a week?
I think it's next week as well. I got to verify with John and G Money, but I'm pretty sure John said 3 weeks, so I think it's next week as well.
Okay, sounds good. So, for those who don't know, Gordon and I do this show every Wednesday at noon Eastern time. That's the usual thing. We're filling in right now while G Money's away, and there's quite a few items to go through. I know we have about a midnight clock off time, but we are going to hit at some topics that pertain to declassified documents, especially those pertaining to the Martin Luther King files that have been classified for over 50 years that have come to light now. 230,000 documents released this week. I don't know who's gone through them in detail, but I do have a few thoughts about that I'd like to share. But more importantly, I think we have some breaking developments on the Israel front, the Middle East, and also East Asia, where Thailand and Cambodia have come to fisticuffs, let's just say it, at one of the strangest moments. A conflict that I think has resulted in some death of some Cambodian soldiers. I don't know how many. Definitely the smell of intelligence agencies abound whenever these sorts of territorial conflicts happen with two nations who have everything to gain by working together, but who all of a sudden start fighting over historical grievances. There's always an Anglo-Zionist, French intelligence, but whatever. There's always an intelligence agency lighting fires behind the scenes. So that's probably what's going on here too. But before we do any of that, we'll do a little word from today's primary sponsor, or first sponsor, I should say, River Bitcoin. So let's just do that. Yeah, right. Did you know that Bitcoin is now a top 5 global asset? Now is the time to buy, and River's here to help. Prepare to maximize your Bitcoin returns without emotion. Introducing River AI, a Bitcoin advisor at your fingertips. Stop trying to time the market. Do it with confidence. At River, you get 0 free recurring buys, 3.8% Bitcoin interest on cash, US-based support, business accounts, and so much more. Don't forget about Bitcoin interest on cash, which can accelerate your business growth too. Businesses can now earn 3.8% interest on cash paid in Bitcoin. That's more money to fuel your next big move. Get started at badlandsmedia.tv/river. Move your cash to River today and start earning a real interest rate with Bitcoin. The future is now. That is badlandsmedia.tv/river. Okay. All right. That was River AI. So, Gordon, a lot of points we were chatting about from the Ukraine front, Middle East, Israel, going through some wild turmoil. So many points. What do you think is the most important thing to hit at off the top of the gate?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think the place to start first is just a quick mention of this.
Yeah,
this isn't really like a discussion necessarily. I want to share this information. Given the zeitgeist over the past few weeks. So this is Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, serving under the leadership of Attorney General Pam Bondi. And he posted 3 hours ago, today I met with Ghislaine Maxwell, and I will continue my interview of her tomorrow. The Department of Justice will share additional information about what we learned at the appropriate time. So this was confirmed by other outlets or nodes,
so
but she was at the meeting with the DOJ all day today, and just talking. And according to her lawyer, she answered every single question they asked. So according to her lawyer, she never once pled the fifth or whatever, or said I'm not going to answer that question. Every question they asked, she answered. No specificity on how long they met, no specificity on obviously what was discussed. We won't know that probably for at least some time, I imagine. And also, there's no. I mean, we have to be cautious about whatever information comes out of her,
Sure.
given who she is. So everything she says has to be taken with a grain of salt. But I imagine that at least some of the things she says can probably be corroborated to some degree, right?
So where do you think they're moving with this? Like, are they going to let her off? If there's nothing,
no.
No, okay. So what are you thinking? Like, what's going on here?
I think her play is to she's looking for clemency, not necessarily to escape prison, but maybe to get like a better, better living conditions, better amenities, better quality of life. That would be the incentive, I would think, from her standpoint. I mean, also the fact that ostensibly from her position where she is, she's the one getting burned for all this, right? I mean, she's the one going down as the scapegoat. I mean, they've thrown her. I mean, it all dies with her. That's how this is going down. Is like
no pun intended there.
No pun intended, but but definitely pun intended. It's like this all dies with her. Yeah. And I mean, again, like I talked about this we've been talking about this Epstein thing on multiple shows, obviously.
Yeah.
But and there's been rigorous debate and good debate, like earnest debate. I mean, John has a very pragmatic approach to this and trying to understand it, and which I appreciate. But I would say that the psychology of this, like if you were like doing psychological profiling, not that I've ever done that or like I'm trained to do it, but she's a socialite. Like she's a rich girl who was born a rich girl who was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, has had every privilege, every amenity, every thing that you could possibly think of. I mean, she was the favorite of her father of all the children. The boat that Robert Maxwell was found dead floating near was called the Lady Ghislaine from her childhood. I mean, he named the boat after her, even though he had, I don't know, like 6 kids, something like that. Point is that I think that she is someone who I would think would be a good candidate for turning on her collaborators, like on her partners or whatever, because chances are to some extent she was probably born into this, much like a lot of the children of these elites are.
Yeah.
She is from like a privileged background, and there's a certain psychology that I think comes with that, where you have like this air of invincibility to a certain extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously has been shattered for her. I mean, given the fact that she's been sitting in a prison cell for 5 years and basically has been branded worldwide as like this monster. She's had everything taken away from her. Her reputation has been destroyed. All the things that you would imagine a London socialite would value has been taken from her, and she's not getting any of those things back, including her freedom, I don't think. So what does she have to lose if she starts rolling over on people, other than people coming and trying to kill her?
Well, obviously. That's a big one.
Yeah.
I don't know. She knows the high rollers that she was like moving in those circles and the type of influence that they have. And if they want to get you and you're in prison, I don't know what can keep you safe from those types of creatures. So that's probably a factor in her thoughts.
Yeah. I'm also of the mind that I'm not at all convinced that Jeffrey Epstein's dead.
I'm not either. I was going to ask you that, actually. We never talked about that. So I was going to actually ask you, have you ever chimed in on that? Because I'm also not at all persuaded of that fact either. There's too many holes in that story. Yeah. And I know from my research that there's a lot of evidence that particularly useful mercenaries, servants of the empire, have their deaths faked. I've got some concrete data sets as well. Like, we know that the guy who, I was going to say Lee Harvey Oswald, John Wilkes Booth. We know that John Wilkes Booth's body was never found. That the one of the 3 guys who apparently like lit the barn on fire after supposedly killing John Wilkes Booth was part of some Russian Sibelian Attis cult, where if you want to be a hierophant, like a member, you have to castrate yourself. And he was like part of this insidious sort of mystery cult that embedded itself in the 1820s into the United States. I forgot his name all of a sudden, but this guy is part of the operation that supposedly kills John Wilkes Booth. They don't find the body. But yet the story is immediately put out that he certainly died in the barn. No serious autopsy, nothing. They were just found some burnt bones in the days before they even were doing DNA testing. And then the guy who goes and carries out the mission to investigate, the 4-man team that investigates John Wilkes Booth in the official narrative, kind of like the Warren Commission of its day, it's friggin' Colonel Olcott. Colonel Olcott, before he goes on to work with Madame Blavatsky and sets up the Theosophists, in 1866, he's like working to carry out the investigations on the murder of John Wilkes Booth. And so you got that guy who's going to be then assigned in 1875 to set up the spiritual warfare, religious engineering branch of the British Empire in New York with Madame Helena Blavatsky and William Quan Judge, right? This trifecta who will then like branch out and end up controlling all of the Indian freedom movements, Irish freedom movements. These guys like are insidious. They spin off into various Rosicrucian orders. So you got things like that, you know, where they didn't find the body. Same thing for the serial killer who was doing this occult ritual murder in 1893 in Chicago. The Jack the Ripper of Chicago. He kills like dozens and dozens of people at his murder castle during the World's Fair of 1893. America's first major serial killer. And Holmes, H.H. Holmes.
Yeah.
And the weirdest story, you know, like he came into my book when I was doing my research on Jack the Ripper and Solomon's Temple, which are connected.
He's a crazy character. He's a crazy character, dude.
You've looked into this guy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Devil in the White City was like one of my favorite books.
I just read that too. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the thing, right? They act today because the murder castle burnt down in the 1920s, and they're like, well, it was probably all made up by paranoid conspiracy theorists. But like all of the evidence was that he actually did build this freaking murder castle with secret chambers, boilers downstairs or incinerators to get rid of the evidence, like soundproof walls and stuff so people couldn't hear the screams. This guy was over the top, and he described when he was caught finally how he was like a poet, and just like a poet can do nothing but sing and write poetry, he can do nothing but murder. And he described how he was possessed by the devil. But the guy himself is doing this at a time when you have the World Parliament of Religions ushering in sort of an invocation for a new global world religion, a perennial religion, bringing in Baha'i and every esoteric branch of religiosity, right, into Chicago to celebrate the new age. And the Theosophists are all over the place. The Swedenborgians, these different Masonic lodges are all over this place at the same time as this guy's carrying out America's first mass murder. And then he's in prison. He's about to get hung. And he gets an offer for like $10,000 by William Randolph Hearst to write his autobiography. And it's like, why would you even offer a guy like that money when he's going to die in like a few weeks? And why would he accept it? And then he does it. And he writes an autobiography. Now he does it, and they publish it. You know, sells a lot of copies, and they apparently kill him. Now the thing is, this guy's great-great-grandson does an investigation because he sees a lot of it. He finds evidence going through his great-great-grandfather's papers that he actually didn't die, and he ends up successfully lobbying to have his great-great-grandfather's body exhumed, and finds out that whatever the hell was in that casket was not his great-great-great-grandfather. They pull out
H.H. Holmes?
H.H. Holmes, yeah. The actual body that was buried in the tomb. First of all, they go down. There's an empty tomb, which is weird. And the guy's tomb has like eight feet of concrete that he demanded in his will be poured onto his tomb. So they buried him in a casket, which was empty, poured on 8 feet of concrete on top of that because he wanted it. And why would you respect that guy? I don't know, but they did it anyway. And then they found that there was somehow another, not a tomb, what do you call it? A casket underneath the first casket that did have a body in it. So this is like a really big ordeal to bust through, you know, this old concrete.
8 feet of concrete. Yeah.
Yeah. And then finally pull out a casket, and the bones in that second casket were of a person who was like 4 feet shorter than H.H. Holmes was actually. So his registered height was like 4 inches taller than this person who was in the casket, indicating that he did indeed, he didn't die. He was actually, it seems like he was probably rewarded for some form of occult service to a higher power. And according to his great-great-great-grandson, he lived out his days into a long life in like South America on some tobacco plantation, which was his great-grandson's thesis. But there's all kinds of stories like this. The guy who is like organizing William Randolph Hearst is William Stead. Stead's like the Pall Mall Gazette, one of the big media magnates who sponsors Cecil Rhodes in London. He's also part of the Blavatsky network. He's pushing the original paranormal research material through his Borderlands journal in the 1890s. He's working with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. All of this stuff, because they're all parts of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is overseeing with the Theosophists the Jack the Ripper murders. Now, this guy Stead ends up going to the United States and schools William Randolph Hearst on government by media, and he has a whole seminar just for Hearst on how to govern society based on media controls, which is, that's Hearst. He's a media mogul too. So he's a follower of Stead. Stead ends up dying on the Titanic. Thing is that makes this weird is that Stead wrote or published in his journal in 1898 a story of the Titanic that goes down with him on it. and that's exactly what ends up happening like 14 years later. Which is, again, he forecasts his own death on the Titanic, and then it happens. So I'm thinking to myself, people say, oh, yeah, it's because he was against the Federal Reserve. They wanted to get rid of all of the anti-Federal Reserve billionaires and influencers, and they put them on the Titanic, and then they sunk it. And that's the big thesis that's been put out there. I don't think that that's true at all. I think that that's a sick joke. I think that a lot of those people who were on that Titanic, who were major players, they didn't actually die. I'm quite persuaded now as well that
they fake their death.
Yeah, I think that there's a process to reward high level mercenaries for the empire with an Elysian Fields, like in Hoboken, New Jersey. You have like there's in Hoboken there's the Sybil's Cave and the Elysian Fields. The Elysian Fields is something which is big in occult ritual, and it comes from a story that probably precedes that from the Aeneid, sort of the sacred myth for the founding of Rome. That it was sort of the founders were the heirs of Troy, and in it there's a story of the Elysian Fields, which is a mythical place, kind of like a heaven hell, but it's a place where all of the heroes of the gods who serve the gods, the immortals, are granted perpetual hedonism for the rest of their days. In the story, it's for eternity, but in reality, we don't live forever physically. So, but that's the story of the Elysian Fields. It's very specifically hedonistic, very sex-based, orgy-based pleasure that the gods grant their favorites, their heroes, to as a blessing, of a payment for tasks rendered. And so it's weird that this was the name given to the center of occultism in the Apennine Mountains in Nursia in Italy. That was where the 11th Sibyl was located, which even there's there's records that a few of the emperors, many Roman generals would go and sacrifice to this particular Apennine Sibyl above the town of Nursia, which is where Benedict came out of, the guy who created the Benedictines. And so the Sibyl, that means like an oracle, a channeler, somebody who's like, in an altered state, usually with the assistance of some psychedelic drugs, usually it's a woman, not always, but usually, and her remarks, the sounds she makes in a drugged up state are usually interpreted by a high priesthood who then tells for money who's ever going to pay what the gods are wanting them to do, channeled through this woman. And that was the Apennine Sibyl. But right outside the Apennine Sibyl is known as Elysian Fields. And they have these areas, which, again, in Hoboken, New Jersey, in 1836, that's when you had the American Elysian Fields set up right outside of the Sibyl's Cave, which is an area that saw some occult murder back in the 1840s, probably continued onward. And I get the sense that there is some locations that are reserved for hedonistic perversity for high-level players of the oligarchy, who they and the last thing I'll say on this whole point, because there's many more case studies like this. You can't prove it but you could triangulate and hypothesize, which is what I'm doing. Part of the Rosicrucian ritual. So when you go up through the degrees of initiation, one thing is when you go, I think, from the 8th degree to the 9th, or maybe it's the 7th to the 8th. I don't know. One of the higher degrees, for most of the Rosicrucian branches, you have to give up your identity. So that's part of it. You have to literally give up your identity and take on a new identity in order to continue onward. Partially to give the idea that you're not being animated by ego. It's not your fame that matters. It's something more pure. But to do that often requires a faking of the death. And there's again, Jack Parsons is another guy who wrote a tale forecasting how he was going to be blown up in an accident in his garage 2 years before. He's working in his garage on jet propulsion on solid rocket fuels, and something apparently goes awry and he blows up and dies the exact same way he said he was going to die 2 years earlier at the age of 38. The guy who's like the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis, or not the Ordo, he's the head of the Ordo Templi Orientis, the Crowley Lodge, who's trying to work on Babylon working rituals to bring in the Antichrist with L. Ron Hubbard. So you got all sorts of weirdness like that, So that when I think of Epstein, that's what I think about it. It just rushes all of those thoughts into my head.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely interesting. Certainly think about H.H. Holmes, and yeah, I mean the murder castle is crazy. The murder castle thing, and also the fact that he's described as being like extremely good looking and charming. Like that was that's how he got away with like half the stuff he got away with, was just that he was very good looking and confident and charming, and he was able to like basically like seduce people, like not just in like a sexual way, but just like, like a police detective would come in because, he was a doctor. Like he posed as forged paperwork showing that he was like a chemist, like a pharmacist, and he opened a pharmacy on the first floor of like this murder castle, and that's how he met all of his. And then the murder castle was also a hotel, so that's how he like met all of his victims. Is like the people would come in, and all the women would like swoon over him, and like police detectives would come in looking for these women who had gone missing, because that's mostly who he targeted, was women. And he would be able to like seduce the police officer, not like in a sexual way, but just he was able to like, he had
it was like mesmerism. It's like he had a mesmeric,
it was like
quality.
Mesmerism. Yeah, where it's like the way it was described was the police detective would come in like to investigate, to question him, and they would end up like smoking cigars, and then the police detective would leave like, I forgot why I even came here, and like just leave.
Yeah.
And like that happened like over and over and over and over again. And like people just weren't, and he was always able to hoodwink people and like spin them around and send them right back out the door. And then like the way he was like, so how was he able to build the murder castle? Well, he was able to build the murder castle because he would hire one contractor, allow the contractor to get a certain amount of work done, and then he would basically like start a fight with the contractor or just refuse to pay him. And then the contractor would basically walk off the job. And then you go hire another contractor. And he just kept doing that over and over and over again until the whole thing was built. And no one contractor knew like the entire thing, So it's like only he had knowledge of what the entire blueprint looked like.
See, and the thing when I go through his story, because he was also murdering in Toronto. It wasn't just in the castle. He actually carried out a gruesome murder with a woman that he charmed and took her children, her 2 young children, for a week trip to Toronto. Ended up killing the kids in the most gruesome way. I'm not gonna go into any details here, but the police officers who were investigating it fainted. It was terrible. Like this guy, But to do all of what he's doing and laying out a trail all over the world, but then settling, not all over the world, but all over like upper North America, and then settling in Chicago to carry out your most vicious murder spree for starting in 1893, I guess, but it went on for a while.
Yeah.
Though it peaked at the World's Fair when everybody was coming around from around the world. It required high-level protection. And I think that's the thing, is that there were forces at play that were interfacing with him that probably had influence within the police departments, within the political strata, that was making sure that he was going to be protected no matter what, to carry out this killing as a ritual. And I think it did seem, I would say, to have something to do with two things, which is the 1871 burning down of Chicago, which was, I mean, Chicago was like a Republican beachhead. It was like right up there with Philadelphia. It was probably even more so because that's where Abraham Lincoln emerged out of. Lincoln's son, I don't know if it was, oh yeah, there he is, H.H. Holmes, Mugget, or his name is Mugget something. Yeah, Holmes was his pseudonym, his killing name, his sword name. But I don't know if, I guess he's like good looking from 19th century standards or something. People really dug those big ass mustaches. But yeah, like this guy. So you had this destruction of Chicago where, I mean, they say it was some woman's cow that knocked over a fire, and all of a sudden all of Chicago goes down. And there's actually one person who was arrested for arson, and he admitted to being part of an anarchist Freemasonic network that, in a coordinated way, launched. They lit some form of explosive device at the same time in various locations around Chicago, according to his testimony. And this is available on archive.org. So there does seem to be some intention. Now, all of Abraham Lincoln's writings, essays, personal letters, everything, the archives were destroyed with that. And it seems to be like a bit of a purge of the Republican elites and the intelligentsia of Chicago during the 1870 to 1890 period. And at that location, they end up creating like a completely new, the world's first, I guess you could say, major, even more than New York. It was like, you know, a skyscraper, new type of city that hadn't really existed before out of the ashes, of very much like a phoenix. In the Rosicrucian world, the idea of the phoenixing ritual is a very big ritual. That was what was done when they burnt down the city of London in 1666, and then they set up Gog and Magog, you know, as the guardians of the city afterwards. And on the shield of Gog is a phoenix emerging out of the ashes, indicating that there was some form of a purge and a reconstruction for this to become the seat of empire afterwards. But it seems like something similar was done there too. And the murder of these people, that's the castle, that's the blueprint, right? Of the murder castle.
This is the blueprint for the murder castle. This is like the Chicago newspaper.
Yeah, it's creepy when you read the descriptions of these things. Fascinatingly creepy.
Dude, it's super creepy. This dude was a total psychopath.
Yeah, he really was. And he disappeared. That's another thing too. He did the year of the Jack the Ripper murders. There's no. Yeah, it's a little bit more of a dapper guy, I guess, with his dippity-doo gel in his hair and stuff.
Dippity-doo. Yeah. He's Dapper Dan.
Dapper Dad. It's a great movie. But we're referring to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, for those who may not know. It's the only non-degenerate Coen Brothers movie that I've found so far. Maybe Big Lebowski, but that's also degenerate, actually. But not as destructive as some others. But all that to say, this guy disappears for 1888. So the 6-month period that the Jack the Ripper murders are happening between, what is it, July and November of 1888, that just as those ritual murders are happening is the month, or is that small period that this guy also disappears from the United States. There's no record of him being in the U.S. at that time. And his great-great-grandson postulates that he thinks his grandfather was either Jack the Ripper or at the very least participated in the Jack the Ripper murders, which were extremely occult. And like I mentioned earlier, they did involve Madame Blavatsky, high-level theosophists. It was called the esoteric section of the theosophists that had created like an inner sanctum to carry out, you know, ritual on certain black magic grimoires and what have you. And they were working with the newly founded Order of the Golden Dawn, which is interesting. So the thing that Aleister Crowley comes out of, Conan Doyle's a part of it. William Crookes, the British scientist, is also a member of the Golden Dawn. But all of the leading founding members of the Golden Dawn who had just set up the Isis Urania Temple in London, they also then set up and work with Blavatsky doing this thing. And it seems like many of them are present, both carrying out the ritual murders of these like prostitutes whose bodies are positioned in very, very strategic locations. So when you actually look at where the 5 canonized bodies of the Ripper victims were located, you'll find it's the Vesica Pisces. So it's actually they're laid out. Their dead bodies are laid out and positioned in the form of the Vesica Pisces, which is basically 2 circles that overlap each other that share a common radius. It's an ancient symbol, and
is this like from a bird's eye view? Like if I were like Google, like you're talking about like in a Google Maps, or you mean like physically like in the same room?
No. They were in Google Maps.
Because that's what happens in that movie, Angels and Demons with Tom Hanks.
Really? What do you mean?
Oh, yeah, Angels and Demons is the sequel to Da Vinci Code. And
yeah, I remember watching that, but you mean that
in the plot of the movie, there are like these murders that are happening, and each murder is like a like one of the cardinals or one of the it's one of the clergy. It's one of the clergy being murdered and then their body is being left at like a Roman statue, like one of a Roman, like a famous Roman monument, and then Tom Hanks's character figures out towards the end of the movie that there's a pattern and like where the bodies are being left, and that's like how they figure out where like the last one's going to be, and they go to confront the occult bad guys. But it's the same idea. It's like I forgot what the pattern was that they figured out, but it was like they looked on a map and they could figure out it was
where
like
the next one was going to be. That's interesting because with that in mind, and knowing also that Dan Brown is extracting a lot of his material that he's popularizing for the mass zeitgeist from actual esoteric belief structures, which were promoted by people like Michael Bagnon from the Holy Blood, Holy Grail author from like 40 years earlier. So he's actually disseminating a diffused form of actual beliefs of the oligarchy. So that's also worth keeping in mind. But then have a look at this. So this is an article I did some months ago called Theosophy, Black Magic, and Jack the Ripper. And here it is. So these are the 5 canon murders, because there were other women who did die, but the ones who died in a very specific Masonic murder and who are like recognized as being part of the same cycle of murders within that, July to November period, were located in these specific locations where you see the pegs on the Google Maps. And that's the Vesica Pisces right over there. You can see it, right? Laid out. And like here, the distance from victim 1 to victim 2 is 930 yards. Victim 2 to victim 4 is 930. Victim 3 to victim 4 is 950. Victim 3 to victim 5 is 950. And then distance from the center of the plan to site 3, 4, and 5 is 500 yards each. So very clearly not random, and it couldn't be, based on the way that these roads are configured, it couldn't be random, and there's no other configuration where you could get that effect. So there was something very important about that. And the other thing that I brought up as an anomaly that struck me when I was doing this research is that one of the key black magicians who he's known as Robert Donston Stevenson, and he was a disciple of Eliphas Levi, Eliphas Levi, that's right, who was a leading black magician and a colleague of Sir Edward Bulwer-Lytton. He was also a student of Bulwer-Lytton, actually, both men. And Bulwer-Lytton initiated him into the dark arts. Now, this guy, Donston Stevenson, ends up working with black magic rituals in West Africa, and he goes into like this world exposition. Anyway, he ends up now all of a sudden in Whitechapel, where he commits himself to a hospital, a psychiatric clinic, for specifically the 4 weeks, or the 2 months that the murders are happening. Now, this guy, Donston Stevenson, I'm quite persuaded he is one of the key figures who is leading the Jack the Ripper murder. And it happened with the protection of Sir Charles Warren, who was the police commissioner, Sir Charles Warren, right? Yeah, of course you do. So Sir Charles Warren, who's like one of the top grand masters of Freemasonry of the day, who's excavated Solomon's Temple. That's how he became famous under the lead of Edward Edward the Seventh. He's like looking for the lost ark. He's looking for the Holy Grail in Solomon's mines. That's his thing. And during that time, he becomes friends with Donston Stevenson in Jerusalem, in Palestine, excavating Solomon's Temple. So, Donston Stevenson in the 1870s, when this is happening, is like already 15 years before the Jack the Ripper murders. They become friends, lifelong friends. Now, this guy is then assigned right before the murders begin to become the police chief of Metropolitan Police for London. Like, of all the jobs you're going to give the guy, you're going to give him that job, along with what's his name? Robert Anderson, Sir Robert Anderson, who's the head of Scotland Yard, who's another member of the Plymouth Brethren, the Derby group that Aleister Crowley came out of. That same Sir Robert Anderson is also working with Warren. And so anyway, I bring up this guy Donston Stevenson and he signs his name as Rosalind Stevenson, based on his obsession with Rosalind Chapel, the Templar Chapel, right? Which is supposedly that comes up in Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code as the sort of repository for the house of St. Clair, which is the bloodline of Jesus, so called, in this Gnostic belief structure. Anyway, I brought up this map because I was surprised to find out that this is Pompadour Cosmetics, and that's the Sherlock Holmes Museum. Pompadour Cosmetics was set up in 1890, about a year after the Jack the Ripper murders were finished. And it was set up by three people. And the three people were Donston Stevenson. And do I have a picture of him here? Oh, yeah. So that's Robert Anderson from Scotland Yard. That's Derby. Aleister Crowley's over there. Let's try to see if I have a picture of... Oh, that's the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn leaders, William Wynne Westcott, McGregor Mathers, and William Woodman, who all co-founded and worked with the esoteric section of the Theosophists under Blavatsky. Oh, yeah, here they are. So that's Mabel Collins down there on the bottom left, and that's Victoria Kremers. These two women are witches. They're channelers, and they end up living with Donston Stevenson, Rosalind Donston, in this location. Do I have a picture of the guy? That's him right there. That's Robert Donston Stevenson. That's him. So they end up working and living with that guy in this location that becomes Pompadour Cosmetics to create their own cosmetics company, making weird, and it seems like they're using human fats for some of their cosmetics. Anyway, they do this for about a year and a half. They're all living together. This guy's a warlock to these two witches. And what's anomalous is that just two buildings down in what's today the Sherlock Holmes Museum is literally the location that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had selected before the Jack the Ripper murders even happened to be the home office of Sherlock Holmes, right? Of all the locations. Now, the thing about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, that guy, is he's also a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. So you got Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who invents Sherlock Holmes. And again, it makes me think twice about why did Muggett select the name Holmes of all the names he could have selected. But he does that. and this dude, is it by coincidence? Is it by accident that you selected a random building for this fictional character, which was one building away from the actual location that would be selected to be the headquarters of Pompadour Cosmetics, run by these three people who were all involved in the actual occult ritual, which seems to have something to do with the reconstruction of Solomon's Temple. And I'll just say that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Which they say that Solomon's Temple, according to Kabbalistic scholars, is built around the Vesca Pisces as its geometry, which is the base of the tree of life in Kabbalism. So they say that's very important architecturally speaking for the construction of the temple itself.
Yeah. Man, that's really interesting. And by the way, I looked it up. The thing that the pattern that Tom Hanks figures out in the movie
Mhm.
is called the path of illumination, and it's actually a real thing. It's the hidden path underneath Rome that leads to the Illuminati's secret meeting place, and
That's
it's actually a place that you can go to, and they like you can. There are many companies now. I'm looking at this right now that host tours, and you can go like take the tour, and so like in the movie, these four outer. It's like this is very occult. It's like four um like elements like four elements:
uh-huh.
earth, air, fire, water. Each one was associated with a statue made by Bernini.
Mm,
Probably one of the most talented marble smiths of all time, I would say.
yeah.
I would say the most talented. I probably would go ahead and say he's the most talented. He could literally make a piece of marble look like flesh.
Yeah.
When you go up and look at the statues, it's like there's like actual impression. Like
You
when one figure is squeezing the other figure, there's actually like impressions, like it's actual flesh being squeezed.
absolutely. His
Very,
ecstasy. I saw his ecstasy of Saint Teresa
yeah,
in Rome when we were there, and it's the most incredibly lifelike thing. The guy himself is an occult degenerate,
yeah.
but the guy is a talent like no other that I've ever seen either as well. It's mind blowing. But again, occult degenerate.
The ecstasy of Saint Teresa is actually the fire element in this
Mm,
pattern. Um,
mm,
so yeah, and yeah, so apparently
mm.
this path, and then it all ends in the center, so it forms like a cross. You can see that it ends in the center at the Castile Sant'Angelo. That's
At the
like where,
Castile Saint Angelo.
yeah, that's like
I
where that's where they confront like the bad guy at the end of the movie.
Okay, I got to tell you this. Thank you so much for bringing this to my attention because when we went to Rome a few months back, that caught my eye the most was the Castel de San Angelo.
Here it is right here.
That's the building. Yeah, that's the Tiber River. The
Yep.
bridge is gorgeous. There's beautiful statues on all sides. Maybe that's not the best angle, but that's the top. And so you go into this thing, and they have a plaque right outside the Castel San Angelo. Oh yeah, those are the gorgeous statues. Some actually creepy, but what's so interesting about the plaque is that they talk about how the Castel was built. Oh yeah, it's the ecstasy of Saint Teresa of Teresa, which is itself again, it's like her having an orgasm with Eros, plunging like I guess an arrow into her or something. But it's super. She's clearly having an orgasm in front of you. Like there's a lot of weird shit like that all over Rome. Now the thing that and that's why a lot of people attack Rome and they think of Rome as purely an evil thing because they only see the decadent ghouls. There's demonic figures. There's a lot of Eros, like absurd levels of Eros, little naked children everywhere. Not everywhere, but all uncomfortable amounts of it, despite the fact that there's clear architectural beauty and brilliance all over the place too, right? And so people will throw out the baby with the bathwater and they'll be like, oh, it's all a satanic thing and there's nothing good. The Castel de San Angelo has a plaque describing what I found was the most useful historic plaques. You know, they got them all over these historic sites, and everything in Rome is historic. It describes how in 1534 it was built up. It had existed in a lower state, but it was really amplified and built up in the form that it took in 1534. And the reason why it was under Pope Paul the Third, I think they say, was to celebrate the end of the 7-year sacking of Rome under the Habsburgs, because in like 1525 or 26, the Habsburg Empire went in, took control of Rome, and stayed in control of Rome for like 7 years or more, maybe 8 years. And when they say sacked, we're talking like Phoenix, like Chicago, 1871, like destroyed. And it had to be literally rebuilt from the ashes. The leading intelligentsia, that gave rise to the beauty of the Renaissance in its most pure form, were wiped out, it seems. Very few made it through the purges, and they came up with a new aesthetical sort of design to rebuild a post-Habsburg Roman Empire, which also was the year that they initiated at that very location the Jesuit order. So the Jesuit order was being set up actually in France, but they were doing a similar thing in here, and that was a few years later that they officially made it in order. But it was 1534 that the Jesuits were being set up, and that's when I think that it seems to me, at least right now, from my superficial research on this topic, the most degenerate, decadent aesthetics that were promulgated in the reconstruction of Rome happened because of that. It wasn't before that. That's not what caused Rome. That was the Neoplatonic perversion. So the fact that you're bringing this thing up, that these were the like murders that happened ritualistically in conjunction with these earth, air, fire, water at these specific locations in Rome is blowing my friggin' mind. And I definitely need to immerse myself in this.
Yeah, so they call it the path of illumination, and purportedly, I mean, you'll have to look into this and see if this is true or not. But what they're saying is that, like, in the lore of the story of like the fiction, Tom Hanks's character explains that the path of illumination was this secret path that members of the Illuminati laid out for one another, so that other members could find their way to I guess like the meeting place where they would all meet up, and they had a name for it in the movie. I can't remember what it was, but it was like it's like the Temple of Science or some bullshit like that. It's like we're all going to go to this place and become enlightened.
Yeah.
So of course, like in the movie, they're explaining in the movie, the Illuminati are the good guys, right? The Illuminati are the guys who are seeking truth, and Lucifer is the light bringer. They don't say that, of course, but that's the lore. The lore of the Satanists is that Lucifer is the bringer of knowledge, and he's the one who is shining the light, where God wants to keep all the knowledge for himself and not allow humans to indulge in it. Lucifer is the generous deity that is bringing this knowledge to man, so that man can partake and share in this divine knowledge.
On that note, have you heard of this book series or television not television or show? It's 3 seasons long. It's called His Dark Materials.
Oh, I've heard of that. Isn't that based on it's based on a book series, isn't it?
Yeah, it's based on a book series. They made it into like an Amazon Prime or Prime Video series.
Yeah,
I
haven't seen it, but I've seen like promotions for it, but I've never seen it.
As your daughters grow older and they want to read stuff, don't let them get anywhere near that damn book.
Good
but yeah, I watch it because I mean the clarity of exactly that Gnostic cosmology was so viscerally in your face. It was sickeningly fascinating. It was like high quality garbage. And the basic subtext of the story is that you've got, a very clear Christian order that's hegemonic in this alternative reality. It's based on the multiverse, right? So people are like zooming in from our universe to like some other kind of similar universe, but where they have talking demons. Everybody has a shape-shifting demon that's a cute little animal that you can identify with. Unless you're a bad guy, then it's a scary looking like bug or something that talks to you. Everybody's got a demon. That's kind of like your soul. So if you die, your demon dies. If your demon dies, you die. So it's kind of like evil Disney. And so what's happening in this thing is that this clearly Catholic type of global hegemonic religion is out to destroy kids' demons. They want to like cripple kids, and it's just so obvious. Like they want to get everybody to conform to some weird thing. But they want to do it in a way that doesn't involve the kid dying. They want to do it in a scientifically humane way. Anyway, the subtext is that there's a guy named Azrael, who's the father of the girl who's Eve. She's like the prophesied Eve who will emerge at the end times to redeem humanity and lead in a rebellion of the fallen angels who had previously fallen in some mythic battle in the past and who are regrouping to declare war now on the demiurge, who's not God, just like the Gnostics that the early Christian fathers fought against. It was these Gnostics that had created artificial stories to try to co-opt the Christian name, but they were simply repackaging the already existent satanic cosmologies that were embedded within the cults of Mithra and Isis, which also should make one pause about why did Madame Blavatsky call her first work Isis Unveiled, and why did the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn call their first temple the Isis Urania Temple? So what is it about Isis as a more than an Earth Mother goddess that they've been trying to invoke as part of bringing about this age of Aquarius, or this age of Horus, right? This new age of the children. What is it? How are they thinking about that? And what does that mean in the ancient world? Because it was these things that seeded these Gnostic things, these Gnostic subcults. And one of the key elements is that the God of the Bible is actually evil. That's the big, like, the big discover that you make as you're going through initiation. And his name is, they give him a really weird name called Yaljabaoth. Yaljabaoth is the name in the secret apocalypse of John and these other apocryphal texts. And he's actually a mutant evil demiurge who's like a deformed progeny of Sophia, who's herself just some like super angelic being who hated men because whatever. They don't really quite define a lot of the motives for these characters, but what she ended up like procreating with herself and created this androgynous deity who made the world evil in his own image, and that's the God of the Old Testament. And then in their world, Jesus becomes remixed as a Sethian Luciferian character. So Jesus is actually the Sethian, the avatar of Lucifer, and so Lucifer isn't a being per se; it's a being that will have these incarnations into material form. At some points a serpent, other times as Jesus, maybe other times as Buddha, whatever, who will then provide secret teachings for his favorites. In the case of the Gnostics, they've got Mary Magdalene as one of his favorites. So you got the Gospels of Mary Magdalene, who's his sacred prostitute, who had his babies. Again, they make all this shit up. I'm not saying I believe any of this, but that's like the story as we see it conveyed by Dan Brown in Da Vinci Code and these other things. And then that gave rise to the bloodlines of what becomes the royal families, or first the Viking clans that become used or recruited by the Roman patricians when the Roman Empire collapsed. They're like, well, we got to find a way to exert our influence somehow. And we don't have much in the way of direct political power as we used to now that the Western Roman Empire has collapsed. So they increasingly start using Viking clans that'll serve as their ISIS-like proxies, and they basically follow orders. They're like, you can keep the loot, keep the booty, have the rape and pillage, but just know who you're serving at the end of the day. And so they're using the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths and the Franks at a certain point, and they end up really liking the Merovingians, and the Merovingians end up like creating the Frankish kingdom. But the way that they legitimize themselves, because they're like, it's tough to legitimize these freaks, nobody really respects. They're called the sorcerer kings. They're pagans. So it's like, what do you do? Well, you got to create a sacred story for them. So they end up spinning this tale that the Merovingians are actually the kids, the progeny of Jesus, who didn't die, but had the babies in the south of France, and the babies grew and they were protected by secret orders, which become, retrofitted Illuminati or Rosicrucian or Templar or, different sects like that, that are just protecting the bloodlines. And then that legitimizes them. And the tale is just passed on generation to generation. And then all of a sudden you've got a number of royal families in Europe who seem to think that they are also direct blood of Jesus, the Sethian Lucifer god. So that's a problem that gets a little out of hand. But the thing I want to show is this too, because this thing starts contaminating in the 1830s, like right when they're setting up Sybil's Cave in Hoboken, New Jersey. And people can Google that. Hoboken, New Jersey, Sybil's Cave, Elysian Fields. Google it. You'll find some stuff. But the same years they're doing that, they're also setting up the obelisk, which was strange for the selection committee that were, it was the 1830s were rolling around, and they're like, well, we still don't have a monument in honor of George Washington in the Capitol. And so they put out a challenge to the various artists of America saying, who can come up with the best design for a monument honoring George Washington? And everyone's thinking they're going to have something on a horse, George Washington being, awesome. And for some reason, this corrupt selection committee ends up accepting and giving the contract to this dude whose name I'm forgetting, who ends up coming up with an Egyptian obelisk. And everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? Like most people are totally confused. But that's like 1832 that this thing is set up there. And then you have, you see in 2004, somebody gets into their head in the wake of 9/11 to add to it by adding the Vesica Pisces, the two overlapping circles right there, right? And this is also the same thing we find in Rome in like 1534, the same year that Rome had the sacking had just been ended. That's when Bernini is assigned, let me say it twice, to redesign St. Paul's Square in order to place the obelisk at the location where the two circles of the Vesica Pisces meet. Right there in the middle. I shouldn't say the square, but in Vatican City. St. Peter's Square. And the thing about the Vesica Pisces is that, or the obelisk, it's a signifier for male energy, right? Like that's the point of the obelisk, is it's the phallus symbol of the erect penis. That's just straight up, that's what it stands for. And a whole ritual is built up around it. Now the Vesica Pisces is an image used to denote the female energy, the vagina. That's where often that's usually where you have what's called the yoni and the lingam in Indian like Hindu cosmology. So you have the same sort of thing with this androgynous character of Shakti, Shiva, partially female, partially man, united in one. So you have the same thing with Baphomet, also as a merger of male and female, plus a little bit of animal entities into one character. Always fusing of opposites. That's a big thing with the Vesica Pisces. Now, the irony, and I wrote this article as part of the ending of my book, where I do another graph, and I actually had the names of Mary Kelly, Annie Chapman, Marianne Nichols, Elizabeth Stride, and Catherine Eddowes. This is called the real magic behind the Vesica Pisces and the occult perversion of sacred geometry. Because when you actually look at, and so you can see the Vesica just sort of expressed in a lot of Christian and even ancient Hindu and Buddhist architecture or designs, right? So that's it in just a few examples, often with the Virgin Mary, often with Jesus. But again, you got it with Buddhist, Cambodian artwork on these various columns, that are portrayed of ancient Aztec art. So it's always the same thing. But it's basically like whenever you have two circles that cross each other, sharing a common perimeter, you get the Vesica Pisces. What you get there is like the basis of the Opus Dei, for example, which is a pseudo, like a right-hand path Jesuit order that was set up in the 1920s. That's also portrayed in Dan Brown's book, and as the evil, ignorant enforcers of the doctrine, the public doctrine of Christianity, but who don't actually believe it. They just want to keep the noble lie in place, right? So but Opus Dei is a real thing. So anytime you involve these circles, you start getting a variety of, this is basic science. This should be like every kid should learn this in a healthy way by playing with geometry. And you start discovering, well, what's the reason for the square root of 2? Or what's the reason for how do you construct the square root of 5? How does that help you build the pentagon as a natural part of geometry in the universe, right? But then we see these Masonic types, they co-opt it and mystify it so that people only can memorize the shapes, but they don't get the lived experience in their mind of understanding why these shapes are why do they have value? What allows you to build these things?
That the mathematical equations directly translate and are directly represented by the shapes themselves.
Yeah.
The shapes are actually illustrative representations of the math equations, and people aren't taught that, and that's what makes math, I think, very, very difficult for a lot of people to grasp. But if we taught it the way that you're explaining it, then I think math would make so much more sense to people if it was taught the way that you're explaining it. But you're given 1 year of geometry in high school, and that's years after taking algebra, and it, like, I don't know, like, I agree, the way that math is taught is really stupid.
Yeah, man. Like, honestly, I flunked out of math 536. It's like math, and I got like 37% in grade, like my last grade of high school. And I thought that I was just dumb because I couldn't understand why the formulas were true, and they were too complex for me to memorize them. And because I didn't know why they're true, my mind didn't hold them in. But if you actually I've seen this now for young people who are trained in a healthier way, where they learn why each formula is true geometrically, they hold it in and can wield that language so much more naturally and in a healthy way. So, you're looking here at like square root of 2, square root of 5, just easily generated. Whereas if you were looking at them mathematically, you get like 1.416, an infinite number, which has no ending. Square root of 5 is, the heart of the golden section. If you just like subtract 1 or add 1, you get a relationship that is the golden section. Square root of 3 as well. You can't express these things mathematically, but when you realize that they're simply the roots of geometric functions, right, then all of a sudden the mind can move with that, and it can continue to explore and make discoveries. And on the right there is one of the representations of the supposed foundations of Solomon's temple that was put together by Charles Warren, which has a lot of application if people are thinking about what is the kooky kind of thinking in Israel today, as far as like what's animating some of this end time shit, and this obsession with rebuilding Solomon's temple that some fanatics really think they need to do to create an invocation to bring in some new age, whatever that might look like to them. This stuff has direct bearing on a lot of that. But that being said, maybe we want to like round it out with a little conversation about some of your insights into what's going on in Israel today, or do we want to just keep it on this type of more occult, esoteric platform?
No, for sure. I think we should. Yeah. And it's worth like that. I think this is kind of an interesting. Not that I think that this is what has actually happened, but like this is a theory that I've seen thrown around. Hillary Clinton's brother, Tony, died June 7th, 2019. Jeffrey Epstein died August 10th, 2019. Wow. The most compelling, or one of the more compelling things that about Epstein still being alive is this picture right here, where on the right, this upper picture is an actual picture of Jeffrey Epstein when he was alive. And then this lower picture is a picture that somebody took that was published of the body being removed from the prison. And you
that's a very different nose.
Very different nose. It's like very different bone structure in the face. Like you can just clearly tell these are not the same guys. Huh. And so like I'm not saying that this is Tony Clinton, but it is interesting that Tony Clinton does appear to have like this more rounded nose, and he died 2 months before Epstein. So again, it's just one of those things you just keep your mind open to it. But anyway, I mean, who knows what the deal is with Epstein, but I'm sure we'll probably hopefully get more truth to that as
I don't know. My hopes are not that high
as time goes on. Yeah, I mean, to me, it kind of feels like if we can't get the truth on Epstein, I don't think people are going to let that go. I think that's something that, regardless of what these authorities are all saying to us, I don't think people are going to let that go. I think that's one thing that people are just kind of like, no, we're not going to let that one go. And they shouldn't. I think, frankly, because it does represent, in my opinion, it does represent state capture. But anyway, I digress.
Oh, before we fully shift over, I'll just throw one thing out there. An interesting movie as far as the old, we were talking about, angels and demons. His Dark Materials, also like predictive programming, normalizing evil, occult, Gnosticism. Another one that I think would be really useful on this angle is Under the Silver Lake. It's an A24 movie.
Oh, and I've heard of that movie. I've always wanted to see that. Yeah,
it's worth watching because it's like it's informed by a lot of psychological profiles of people who get way too into numerology, like bad, irresponsible types of approaches to conspiracies, and have not dealt with their personal demons and hedonistic impulses. So personality types, of which there's no shortage, have a certain constant, like, common profile. And the writers of that film were very much aware and studied that profile and built the whole story around it. But it also involves exactly what we're talking about, that certain high level players within the architecture of empire will fake their deaths in order to go to the next layer of hedonistic pleasure in their ritual initiation experience after they've excelled to a certain platform of influence within the material world, and their services are like no longer needed in a certain way, like they've done everything they can do. And that's sort of like the core overtone of the entire movie. It's a bit of a sick joke, but it's worth checking out because it's high quality, sick joke, very high quality. Yeah.
Interesting. So I think, let's see. The best place to start would be, it's really disappointing how this stuff is not like really that well reported, but I want to start with the Knesset.
Yeah.
And I'll go to One Jewish State, I think is what it's called. One Jewish State.
Yeah, because you have some weird reverberations in the Knesset right now where a number of Orthodox leaders are threatening to possibly skedaddle, right? And just like bail on Israel completely.
Yep. So this is an account run by, this is an account.
Yeah.
One Jewish State. Okay. It's a media company, media news company. The founder is David Friedman. David Friedman was the ambassador to Israel from the United States during the first Trump term. Okay, so he was a Trump-appointed ambassador to Israel. He's no longer the ambassador to Israel. Now it's Mike Huckabee. But now he has this media company called One Jewish State. All right, so you would imagine that this guy is pretty, and he's very pro-Israel, obviously. Very like hyper Zionist. And so he reported yesterday, it says, breaking, for the first time since 1967, the Knesset just passed a declaration on applying Israel's sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, with a broad majority, 71 out of 120 seats. Meaning the coalition and opposition voted together. We hope that this declaration will soon lead to real policymaking, because pretty much this is as I understand it, this is the equivalent of like, Congress will pass like a declaration, like it doesn't, like it's not like a codified law, it doesn't like actually mean anything, but like they'll adopt a formal position on something, on an issue. It's a symbolic gesture more than actual like codified legislation, but basically it's giving the green light for the Netanyahu administration to go ahead and annex the West Bank. And by the way, this is the West Bank, not Gaza. So they weren't voting here on annexing Gaza. This is just Judea and Samaria, which is the West Bank. So anyway, that's a pretty kind of ridiculous, and of course David Friedman is like cheerleading this on both on the One Jewish State account, but also on his personal X account, is like waving the flag, like cheerleading this, saying this is the greatest thing ever. Finally we're annexing Palestine and taking what is rightfully ours. Sick stuff. But anyway, so that's where that is right now. And then I guess on that same note, you have this story. A far-right minister says Israel pushing to wipe out Gaza will make it Jewish. Amichai Eliyahu says planned settlements and Strip won't be fenced in, denies starvation claims. And then Lapid says Israel cannot win war with ministers who sanctify blood and death. Heritage Minister Amichai Eliyahu said Thursday that Israel is advancing the destruction of Gaza and that the Strip will be made totally Jewish, drawing outcry among opposition politicians and eventually from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself. Quote, the government is racing ahead for Gaza to be wiped out, Eliyahu told Haredi radio station Kol Barama, Haredi, meaning the like ultra orthodox. Quote, thank God we are wiping out this evil. We are pushing this population that has been educated on Mein Kampf. Eliyahu said that Gaza will be cleared for Jewish settlement and that Jewish towns will be fenced in inside cantons. All Gaza will be Jewish, he said, though he clarified that Arabs who are loyal to Israel will be tolerated. We aren't racists, the far right Atzma Yehudit. By the way, that word Atzma Yehudit means Jewish, literally means Jewish power.
Huh.
So
okay.
It's the Jewish version of white power. That's literally what it means, is Jewish power.
Dear God.
Yeah. So and that's Itamar Ben Gvir's political party. We are fighting for those. We are fighting those who fight us. Eliyahu denied that Gazans are not getting enough food, calling it a campaign against Israel, but noted that the country was at war and trying to kill these monsters. There's no hunger in Gaza, he said, but we don't need to be concerned with hunger in the Strip. Let the world worry about it. Yeah, and then it just goes on to explain that. Opposition leader Yair Lapid said Eliyahu's comments on Gaza were an attack on values and a public relations disaster. Quote, Israel will never convince the world of the righteousness of our war against terror so long as we are led by an extremist minority government with ministers who sanctify blood and death, he said in a statement. Lapid added that Israel's soldiers are not fighting, dying, and being injured in order to wipe out a civilian population. This is a government that has lost sanity. I told you, the Democrats leader, Yair Golan, wrote on X. It says Labor MK Gilad Kareev said that Eliyahu's continued tenure as a government minister casts a strain and a disgrace on the state of Israel and the entire Jewish people. Quote, this is a violent, unrestrained nationalist who preaches carrying out war crimes, and in doing so violates not only international law, but also the laws of the state of Israel, he wrote on X. And it just kind of goes on for more of that. But not new rhetoric as far as the Netanyahu government goes. As we've heard this rhetoric before from several other ministers, mostly Itamar Ben Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich. And Smotrich, by the way, said weeks ago when they were talking about annexing the West Bank, he said, as the finance minister, he said, we have all of the infrastructure in place to immediately begin assuming like government control over the West Bank. As soon as you give us the green light, we are ready to go. So anyway,
well, this is extremely I'm used to being disappointed with this side of the world and news from these corridors. Do you see anything? You mentioned to me earlier that with the exodus of the Orthodox Jews, that you could see feasibly, possibly a serious crisis or toppling, toppling of the government, or just a fizzling out of Israel as a state, if the Orthodox Jews, representing, you said, what, 20% of the community of Jewish people, disappear, or they might leave. Is that a serious thing right now?
I do have that headline. Before I get to that headline, I'll just mention this one from 2 days ago. That here's Smotrich. Gaza will be an inseparable part of Israel. IDF chief favors security annexation. So now, even though they voted yesterday on annexing of the West Bank, here he is the day before that vote, openly saying we're just going to go ahead and do a security annexation, meaning that we're going to reoccupy, like military occupation over Gaza. We're just going to make Gaza part of Israel. Again, this is part of the course.
More of the same.
More of the same. Yeah. Here's what you're referring to, and this is where I think it gets really interesting because, if you were tasked, Matt, with taking on this task of defeating this supremacist movement, which is what this is. We're dealing with Jewish supremacists here. That's what these people are. How do you go about doing it? Well, Sun Tzu would say the most effective way, the best form of victory over them would not be physically annihilating the nation of Israel, like dropping nukes on it and nuking it, which is what some people who are anti-Israel would suggest doing. But Sun Tzu would say that's actually not the best way to do it, because as you have pointed out, that actually might be the plan, like the intended plan by people like the Rothschilds, the people who actually created Israel. Israel might have actually been created as a sacrificial lamb, hoping that like a country like Iran or whoever would do exactly what some people are suggesting should be done and nuke it, which would turn it into a martyr and then basically animate the entire West against those forces, Iran and her allies. And then that would lead to a very violent kinetic civil World War III, which, could end with just mass bombing campaigns of every major country in the world, right?
Yep.
So the most effective way then, or effective strategy for defeating Israel would be to basically manipulate circumstances so that it dissolves in a more organic, natural way politically, meaning that the economy collapses, the political infrastructure collapses, and the rule, like the regime, the rule of law, or the authority of the government per se collapses, and that would require what? That would require economic collapse, crisis. That would require an exodus of certain people, who are the true Jewish supremacists, right? So this headline here: ultra Orthodox willing to leave the country over conscription issue, says Goldknopf. So we've been talking about Goldknopf now for a couple of weeks, because he is the leader of the United Torah Judaism party. So United Torah Judaism is the party that left Netanyahu's coalition last Monday, right? And then this is not this past Monday, but the Monday before. And then the following Wednesday, the Shas party, which is the other ultra Orthodox party, held a vote, and they decided not to leave the coalition because that would have caused the government to collapse, but to resign from all the minister positions and as like a show of protest, but then stay in the coalition so that the coalition stayed intact, so the government stayed intact. And so now, like, of course, the reason that both of those parties did those two things is because of this conscription issue, where despite the fact that these are the people the ultra Orthodox, who are basically they're the ones who are really strongly demanding, for the most part. Some of them are not pro-war. Some of them actually apparently are sympathetic to Palestine. But the ones with political power are the ones who are calling for more war. The ones who are enamored with bombing campaigns in Iran, the ones who are enamored with bombing campaigns in Syria. Every time they go to vote to dissolve Netanyahu's government, he drops a bomb on a new country, and they, instead of voting to dissolve the government, they clap gleefully and say, more and more and more, please, we want more of this. However, they don't want to fight in those wars. So everyone in Israel, man or woman, are required to serve 2 years in the IDF. These people have been exempt for however many years, 75 years, however many years Israel's existed, 77 years. But that's all. But that's only been a practice. It's not codified into law. The Supreme Court ruled last year that that if the IDF generals want to conscript these kids, they are legally allowed to conscript them. And if the kids don't show up for service, then they are draft dodgers, and they should be thrown in military prison. And so these people, these ultra Orthodox, have been demanding that Netanyahu codify the exemption into law, and he has failed up until now to do that. And so now what Goldknopf is saying, he's the leader of the UTJ, and he says that they're going to leave the country. Well, at least reports that I've been reading for the past year, and hearing things, that's already been happening to a large degree. Not necessarily among the ultra Orthodox, but just among Israeli people in general are just leaving the country because they're worried about the direction that things are going. They don't want to be conscripted into the military. The economy is not doing well at all in Israel. The economy is like in a total down spiral, mostly because people in their 30s, who tend to be like the heart of most economies, are having to leave their businesses and leave their jobs to go fill like their reservist status role in duty in the IDF. So it says right here, Israel's ultra-Orthodox Jews may be forced to leave the country en masse if authorities start arresting yeshiva students who refuse to report for mandatory military service. United Torah Judaism chairman Yitzhak Goldnoff declared on Thursday following the detention of several draft dodgers earlier this week. In an interview with the national religious Makor Rishon newspaper, the Hasidic politician insisted that if there is no choice and the ultra-Orthodox have to leave the country, then they will leave the country. There will be a state without ultra-Orthodox. The ultra-Orthodox will not change their way of life because there is an army and a war. There is an army, and there are also those who will go to the army. If you say you are short 50,000 soldiers, take these draft dodgers. There are 100,000 draft dodgers in Tel Aviv and Gash Dan. He claimed, referring to Israel's densely populated coastal region. Some 80,000 ultra-Orthodox men aged between 18 and 24 are currently believed to be eligible for military service, but have not enlisted. The Israeli Defense Force has said it urgently needs 12,000 recruits due to the strain on standing and reserve forces amid the ongoing war against Hamas in Gaza and other military challenges. Some 2,700 Haredim enlisted over the past year, far short of the IDF's goal of 4,800. So anyway, yeah, this is the direction that things are heading in. And really what we're looking at here is we're looking at the end of Israel. And when I say that, I don't mean the end of Jewish people living in this part of the world. What I mean is that these people threatening to leave Israel to do this exodus represents the end of Jewish supremacy, because the ultra-Orthodox, the Hasidic, they make up the heart of what we would describe as like the Jewish supremacy movement. They're the ones who strongly advocate. Basically, the reason that they're protected and they've been given this special eligibility for like this special exemption that's been practiced for the past 77 years is because they're the ones who dedicate their lives to studying. They call it Torah, but really it's the Talmud and it's the Zohar. The Zohar being the founding scripture of Kaballah. So when you talk about the Kaballah, the tree, like the Kaballah tree or whatever, all that comes out of the Zohar. And the traditional like Jewish scriptures, as I understand, like thought, is that the Zohar was written in the 2nd century AD. But
really, I thought it was like a medieval thing. Really?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like in the lore, like the Jewish lore, it was written in the 2nd century AD. But the scholarly view is that this guy in Spain wrote it in the 1200s.
Yeah.
And then like on his deathbed, or maybe like right after he died, his wife basically came out and said, yeah, because he was the one who was popularizing it in the 1200s, saying this book was written in the 2nd century AD. And he was like, he said it was written by this famous guy. His name escapes me, in the 2nd century AD. And then when this guy like died, or when he was on his deathbed, his wife was like, yeah, he actually wrote the Zohar, and he just credited that other guy to give it, more gravitas. But
they do that a lot, man. They do that a lot. Like even the writings of Hermes Trismegistus as well are sold by true believers as if they were older than the writings of Moses, and that Hermes probably, they say, trained Moses in the secret arts of Egyptian wisdom and all the stuff. All of the evidence that has ever been dug up is that these were like late 2nd century writings that were part of a broader alchemical sort of Gnostic retooling of Christianity to infiltrate it and destroy it from without and from within. And then it became like sort of revived after the medieval ages with like Albertus Magnus, like these Dominican alchemists who are like, and then later on Paracelsus and others who then created this like story that it was like so ancient it precedes every religion, and that somehow its oldness gives it legitimacy. Or like the Testament of Solomon too. It's like a medieval grimoire written in the 12th century, and all these people like Aleister Crowley and all of these guys I went through earlier on with the Hermetic Order, they love the Testament. Charles Warren, is studying the Testament of Solomon. Is this Solomon's Testament? Hell no. This is not Solomon's Testament. It was written in the mid 13th century, right? By black magicians. And then they write this thing to try to make it seem as though it goes back 2,000 years earlier as this secret demonology textbooks teaching the adepts on how Solomon wielded a sacred pentagon ring to
control demons and make the demons build the temple for him.
Yeah, come on.
That's what it says. That's what the Zohar says, that Solomon communicated with demons and was able to enslave them and then force them to not only build the temple for him, but then to teach him the knowledge, like the sacred divine knowledge. And basically what the Zohar advocates for. The Zohar is the foundational document that like the greatest influence on Hasidic Judaism. So I just showed you the picture of this guy, Goldknopf, right? He's a Hasidic Jew. This guy is Hasidic. He's ultra Orthodox. Hasidic Judaism, for everyone listening at home, I want to make this very clear, was created in the 1770s. It is the exact same age as the United States of America. Okay. So when people talk about Judaism being the oldest religion in the world, not this form of Judaism. This form of Judaism is about 250 years old. Okay. So like the state of Virginia, where I'm sitting right now, is older than Hasidic Judaism by about 150 years. So this guy, or the Hasidic Judaism in the Zohar, what it openly advocates for is the use of magic. It basically talks about communicating with the spirit realm and like merging the physical and spirit realms momentarily so that you can tap into the spirit realm's divine knowledge and learn from it and glean from it. And basically by communicating with these entities on the other realm, you can then learn this. That's how you become closer to God and become like the oneness, the righteous. I think they call it the righteous oneness.
It's the Ein Sof.
The Ein Sof, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the Ein Sof.
right.
It's like the righteous oneness, and you achieve that by basically melding the two realms together momentarily and gleaming their knowledge. And like when you stare back into the abyss stares back into you, and that's where you get the divine knowledge put into you, and then you can then. And so what they actually had to in like I think it was the 1650s. Because the Zohar existed for hundreds of years before the Hasidic Judaism was codified. But in like the 1650s, these mystics who were practicing this stuff basically said they issued like a Jewish version of a fatwa. For those who are familiar with that, what that is, you've heard of the fatwas from like the Muslim clerics, right? Like the fatwa from the Ayatollah saying that Iran will not pursue a nuclear weapon because it's contradictory to, the religion of Islam. So like they issue like a Jewish fatwa basically saying that nobody should practice the magic that is written in the Zohar. And basically what they meant is the commoners shouldn't practice what's written in the Zohar. The elites can practice it, but the commoners, and what I read digging into all this, this is what their actual concern was. They were worried that a commoner who was too good at it might like rip a hole in like the space-time continuum, and like a demon would actually come into the physical. They're worried about like an actual commoner summoning a demon to the physical world and then like unleashing a demon that wasn't under the control of the elite. That is what these people believe. And they achieve these rituals. They perform these rituals by taking like chalk and drawing circles on the floor and lighting candles. So what does that sound like to everyone else? Because to me, that sounds like Luciferianism, but
It's a good magic circle.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a good sacrifice circle.
Like when I draw a circle with a star in the middle of it and then light a bunch of candles around it, like it's not like you said, it's not a bad magic circle. It's a Jewish magic circle. This is a fun magic circle, right? It's for the state of Israel, guys. It's like, what the hell are we talking about here? Because it sounds like you're talking about literally worshiping Satan when you describe that.
It sounds a little bit like that, eh? And there's so many places to go with this, but I just want to read quickly a quote from Rabbi Abraham Isaac Cook. And I've read this a few times in our previous shows, but in the context, I just want to remind people that this is who the British Empire selected as the head Ashkenaz rabbi of Palestine under British mandate until his death in, I think, 1935 or 36. But this guy worked with Jabotinsky. He was a Greater Israel patron, or a guy who pursued that. All of his followers and disciples became the vanguard of the illegal settler movement in the 1960s and 70s to onward. Like, he's everywhere. It's such an influential guy. And he wrote a book called the Orot, and it's a Kabbalistic book as far as a Kabbalistic methodology. And he writes in it saying, the truth concerning the land is revealed in Kaballah. So if anybody wants to understand what is this blood and soil cult that Judaism was supposed to be transformed into, because before that was not what it was about. But under the guidance of the British mandate, that's what it was supposed to be, is like this sacredization of this physical land that became the thing that you immersed your identity into as an entire people. So he says that the truth concerning the land is revealed in Kaballah. Jewish mysticism, Kaballah militates for life in the land of Israel. Rationalistic approaches to Judaism place no special value on the land of Israel. So he's attacking all of the rabbis and the Jewish, which is the majority, who are trying to use their mind to think about the philosophy, the moral values embedded within their sacred works. He's like, no. Rationalistic approaches they don't get it. In wars, now he jumps straight ahead. In wars, national characters crystallize. Israel, as the universal reflection of mankind, benefits thereby, benefits from wars. The heels of Messiah follow upon world conflagration. I mean, come on. So he's giddy now. The heels of the Messiah can only happen upon world conflagration. That means burn the world. At the hour of the downfall of Western civilization, Israel is called upon to fulfill its divine mission by providing the spiritual basis for a new world order. Like, this guy, it's like a bad villain in a comic book or something, but that's actually how these guys, he's such an influential figure. So it's worth just being reminded that, like we're saying, Kaballah, and maybe people have told me, I don't know this, I've never studied Kaballah, I haven't immersed myself in the Zohar, I've read excerpts, people have told me that there's different schools and there might be some healthier schools of Kaballah out there. Maybe that's true. I'm open to the possibility. I haven't seen it, but maybe. What I do know is that all of those creeps who are doing like the most damage to humanity are following a version of Kaballah. Maybe it's the proper version of Kaballah that and it's doing a lot of damage. So
yeah,
there's something awry. There's something amiss.
Yeah.
Embedded.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, like I played the video for you a while back of Netanyahu meeting the Rebbe.
Oh yeah.
In 1990.
Yeah.
And the Lubavitcher Rebbe in the Chabad up there in Brooklyn.
Right.
And this is a great little op-ed written by Rabbi David Nachshon. And Rabbi David Nachshon, for those who don't know, is a close personal friend of Bibi Netanyahu. Not only that, he is the person. I think it might be this guy standing right here in the center between Netanyahu and the Rebbe. I don't know that, but I kind of assume that's why he's including this picture right here. But he's the guy who actually introduced Netanyahu to the Rebbe in 1984. And Netanyahu and the Rebbe become very close. And for those who don't know who this guy is, the Rebbe is a term that became popularized in the late 1700s to distinguish a Hasidic ultra-Orthodox rabbi versus a traditional rabbi. So the traditional rabbis who were in the Pale of Settlement and were all politically corrupt. They were all in bed with the Polish and Russian and Ukrainian leaderships of their local governments, and basically all the Jewish people were starving while the rabbi were all, fat and happy, like just like the Pharisees in the Bible. And so then these mystics who were like living in the woods, basically outcasts, started coming around, and while the rabbi were consorting with the Europeans, the Rebbe were like going into the communities and doing like faith healing, like performing magic to do like faith healing and basically like help people, right? And so people would, and these rabbis are all Yiddish, so they're all Yiddish, and so they're called Rebbe, which is Yiddish for teacher. I'm told. And so you have rabbi, which are like traditional rabbi, then you have Rebbe, which are like Hasidic rabbi. So this guy's like,
and this is around what year did they begin to do their healing and going out into the communities? What was like 18th century earlier, or
it's like 18th century, but like my understanding is that the religion becomes codified formally in the 1770s. So it was probably happening in the decades leading up to that. But it's like in the 1770s is when both Hasidic and Orthodox Judaism are like codified, like formally created.
That's interesting, eh?
Yeah. And so, but these Rebbe back then, what they're most known for is they would have a necklace with a pouch in it, and inside the pouch would be like a rolled up scroll. And what did they call it? They called it a amulet, is what it was called. Yeah. And that scroll was considered like a sacred piece of paper, and they'd unroll it, and it would have some incantation on it, and they would come into somebody's house who was sick, and they'd take out the scroll, and they would sprinkle like whatever their fairy dust everywhere, and then they would like perform like a seance and like read the incantation and perform magic, and purportedly they would heal people by doing that. And they built a very large following from doing it, and that's what eventually led to like Frankism, like Jacob Frank, and Zevi was, I think, before that, like 1666, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but all of that, it's all from the same poisonous tree. All of those guys are all performing. Jacob Frank was arrested by Polish authorities, not just Polish authorities, but Polish rabbi as well. Like the Jewish authorities were arrested this guy, and when they arrested him, he was performing a ritual with, it was 6 men with, or maybe it was 7 men, 6 or 7 men with 6 or 7 crucifixes, and a woman performing sacred prostitution on this woman with these crucifixes. And so they arrested. They were doing this stuff, and they said they were doing it as part of it was a religious ceremony, but obviously it was like some sort of Epstein Island kind of thing going on there.
Yeah, right.
For sure.
So I got 2 questions. What about the good, like the good Hasidics? Or I say good. I don't even know what that word means anymore in some context. But you have many Hasidic Jews who protest against the state of Israel. They're very much loudly in defense of the Palestinians, and they're all over the place. They get their asses kicked by the Zionists in Israel and everywhere. Do you know what faction they come out of, or how many factions of Hasidism are there?
Hasidism, I think, is what it said. It was what it is. Yeah.
So how many different? Like Christianity has so many splinter groups and splinter factions, and what about?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you have Orthodox and then you have ultra Orthodox, and so Orthodox is Orthodox, and then ultra Orthodox is Hasidic, and it's taken me a while to like figure out all the damn nuance to this, but it's a good question. Like, I don't know what the answer is. I don't have an answer. But the only thing I can really tell is that the people that you're talking about who do exist, as far as I can tell, there's videos of them getting the crap kicked out of them by Israeli police for all they're doing is just standing there with signs that say "Free Palestine," or signs that say "No War," and then the police roll up with their clubs and beat the shit out of them.
Yeah.
So, from as far as I can tell, they have no political power. Like they're
Okay.
politically irrelevant, which means that while they may have numbers, I don't know what their numbers look like. They don't have the numbers to be politically relevant, and therefore they're not really part of the political calculus. They're not. It's not like they're suddenly going to come into power and they're going to reverse all this stuff. That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
Now maybe if Israel becomes a multicultural society, like it was pre 1947, like Palestine was pre 1947, maybe those people would form a party that would be part of a multi-party system, and they're all collaborating together with Muslims and Christians, and just like Palestine was before. But I don't think those people have enough clout or political power to take over the Zionist state and be in charge in a Zionist state situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
But
just to finish this thought, like what this guy's saying here. So David Nashon's the guy who introduces Netanyahu to the Rebbe. He goes on to say that this is from 2018. This op-ed. He says, both recently and over the years, Netanyahu has been ceaselessly attacked, and I felt the need as a personal friend to come out and encourage him. He introduced the two in 1954 or 1984. Whenever Bibi came to the Rebbe, the attention he got was outstanding. You could see the love flowing. The Rebbe exuded great love for him. You always saw the faith the Rebbe had, that Netanyahu would do the right thing. The Rebbe trusted him. One time during the holiday of Hashanah Rabbah, Netanyahu was debating moving to Israel and entering politics. The Rebbe really encouraged him to stay in this position at the UN. The Rebbe really trusted him. There was no one who could do the work like Netanyahu, and the Rebbe made that absolutely clear. Netanyahu did remain in the UN for a while after that, and then came to Israel. When he told the Rebbe he was moving to Israel, the Rebbe sent him a warm letter through myself discussing immigration to the Holy Land and encouraging him. Around that time, I brought Netanyahu to the Rebbe in honor of his upcoming immigration. It was the spring of 1988, and the Rebbe told him some things very explicitly as if it was a prophecy. He spoke to him about the future, about what Netanyahu would go through when he arrived in Israel. The Rebbe told Netanyahu that he would have to fight with 119 people, but you certainly will not be concerned because God is on your side. Then the Rebbe gave him a blessing from that first moment until today. We need to take that video and use it to remind us. Sometimes I show it to Bibi and remind him that this is a prophecy from the prophet of our generation, and he's talking about exactly the situation you're in now in Israel. Rabbi Nachshon also recalled that Netanyahu thanked the Rebbe for the many opportunities that you came and blessed me. He said another time Netanyahu said that he internalized the Rebbe's message well. Quote, every time I show him the video where the Rebbe is telling him about the 119 Knesset members, he becomes very emotional, talking about Netanyahu, because it is so accurate. The Rebbe told him explicitly that he would come to Israel and fight 119 adversaries. The Rebbe is telling him what will happen in the future, and he's smiling because he really doesn't understand what he's in for, talking about Netanyahu in that moment. But remember, in that video, like it's not mentioned in this article, but in that video, the Rebbe explicitly says to him, like, the Messiah is coming. You haven't done enough to prepare for the Messiah. The Messiah is coming. Time is short. And now he's like, yes, we are doing everything we can to prepare for the Messiah. And so it's like, I mean, like this is like a dispensationalist. This is a dispensationalist, end of days worldview that we're talking about. And we're talking about, regardless of what your specific ideology is when it comes to that kind of stuff, these people believe that. And Netanyahu isn't just a political figure. He is a zealot, in my opinion. I think he was raised by, like, Abraham Kook. You talk about Kook. Like Monday, I did on the Book of Trump. I did a 3-hour show about Netanyahu, and I only got through up to like the 2000s. But I talked about the men who raised him. Like his grandfather, Nathan Malachowski, his father, Benjamin Netanyahu, Abraham Kook, who wouldn't have been alive by the time Netanyahu was born, but I mean, Kook certainly was friends with his father, and certainly was friends with Abraham Stern, and certainly friends with Zayav Jabotinsky, and those men would have all been around for like Netanyahu's childhood. And you got to think about the stuff that those guys are all like telling Netanyahu when he's a little kid. It's like, hey man, like Israel is going to need you when you are older. Like you're going to have to pave the way for what? I
mean, he never had a chance. Like the Jesuits say, show me the child, I'll show you the man, or I'll show me the child and I'll give you the man, and or Bertrand Russell, if we get the child young enough before the age of 10, we can get him to believe that snow is black, which I think he got by studying the Jesuit meditations exercises, where it explicitly says if your superior representing God's will wants you to believe that black is white, you will believe black is white, as far as the self-hypnotic brainwashing. So again, poor little Bibby growing up, I don't know what could have saved his mind from being contorted into the thing that it became, but he didn't have a chance. But dude, this has been good, and God, there's so many things I want to introduce, but I feel like anything I say is going to unveil a giant rabbit hole that we should probably preserve for future episodes.
45-minute discussion. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But no, this is cool. Oh my God. Okay. We got another ad. I forgot to read the ad. So while I go and pull up the ad, it'll be the bookend of today's show. You can scan through and see if there's any worthwhile comments that are good to bring up. So let me just go and do that. Here's the ad. I'll slowly get to that, which is Trezor. That's it, Trezor. Okay, here we go. Oh boy. Your crypto deserves the ultimate protection, and Trezor delivers just that. Trezor offers a secure and user-friendly solution for managing your digital assets. It delivers on its promise of robust security, providing a crucial layer of protection against online threats and unauthorized access. Since 2014, over 2 million users have trusted Trezor, the world's first hardware wallet, to secure their Bitcoin, Ethereum, and over 9,000 other coins and tokens. With state-of-the-art encryption and offline storage, Trezor keeps your assets safe from hackers, malware, and exchange breaches. Its open-source design ensures transparency, while Trezor's suite app makes managing your portfolio a breeze. Buy, sell, swap, and track with ease. Designed with simplicity in mind, Trezor ensures that even those new to cryptocurrency can navigate its features with ease. With Trezor, you can confidently manage your cryptocurrencies, knowing that your digital wealth is protected by industry-leading security protocols. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/Trezor to get your Trezor and safeguard your crypto with confidence. That's badlandsmedia.tv/Trezor. Okay. And the final thing is,
I have a Trezor, by the way, so I endorse that.
Is it like a physical? So it's like a physical hard drive or something I'm carrying around?
Yeah. It's like a cold storage device for your Bitcoin, like for crypto, for Bitcoin. So
that's not a bad idea, because right now I carry it around my phone, and if I lose my phone, I lose my Bitcoin, and I should really think.
No. You got to get a cold storage, and G Money will help you set it up. He helped me set it up. It was great. He sent me like a few Satoshis to test it. He double tested it. It was awesome. So I had no idea what I was doing, and he walked me through it like I was a dumbass, because I am. Yeah. And I understand it now. So.
Okay. All right. Well, then in that case, I'll get him to hold my hand and take me through the scary world of hardware. I feel I lack confidence when it comes to these sorts of things. So to have somebody like G Money in our network is very good.
You need a raging autist like G Money to guide you through the noise. Yeah.
All right. Thank God for that. So Gart's coming up. Should I play the Gart
Yes.
ad? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Play the Gart ad.
I'll do it. All right.
Can't make it to Deadwood? No problem. Join us virtually for the 9th stop on the Badlands Great American Restoration Tour. Streaming live August 15th through 17th from legendary Deadwood, South Dakota. Experience Gart from anywhere with our exclusive virtual live stream ticket. Your pass unlocks front row access to lively discussions and the premiere of Codex 9/11. All from the comfort of your own home. Make new friends and have your questions answered live from the group chat. Grab a ticket to join us in Deadwood. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/Deadwood and get your pass today.
All right, sweet. Looks like we got a troll in the chat by the name of Burning Bright asking us how gay is this show right now on a scale of Lindsey Graham to Boy George. I'd say we're pretty close to Boy George right now, BB.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of BB, we have our very own BB in the chat. All right, let's hit some Rumble rants. I'm getting a little delirious here.
right.
Envy Runner, $5. Thumbs up emoji back to you, brother. Crystal Anon, $20. Thank you guys. Have you ever heard of Bob Cornuke the Bob Cornuke documentary about the Wailing Wall actually being a Roman fort wall?
I would like to watch that. I'm going to write that down and I will watch that because I find that curious. Thank you.
Yeah, that damn wall that they always make the American politicians go like kiss it in like a humiliation ritual, right? Like remember what Elon said something along the lines of like, yeah, man, this Gaza thing seems like it's totally out of control. And then they forced Elon to come like take a tour of Auschwitz and like kiss that stupid wall.
Yeah. There's something going on.
There's something.
And what's up with the cube? What's up with the black cube on the head?
I don't understand the black cube thing. Apparently what I'm not kidding when I say this, and I might have this wrong, but my understanding is that the black cube, they keep like a scroll of prayers in the cube, kind of like the amulet around the neck.
Oh,
I don't know if that's true, but I think you open it up, boop, and it has like a little scroll, and you take the scroll out. And I'm not making a joke when I say that. I actually think that's what it is, but I have no idea. It's like they have many little hats that they wear. Some of them are the covers, and some of them are the cubes. But I don't know.
All right, that's creative.
Crystal Anon, $5. Can we give these guys some shekels? Please match anyone who can. Much love. Thank you, Crystal Anon. Thank you for the shekels. We appreciate the shekels. Neo Tribal. Good day, Badlands history freaks. Can we all agree that a second show every week is in order? So much to get over that one show is just not enough. Well, thank you, Neo Tribal. Appreciate the support, my man. Ears for you, $20. Thanks for taking the time to do a second breaking history this week. The work you guys put in is much appreciated. Well, thank you for listening and your support.
Thank you.
Garrett Keene, $10. This is a lot of money in Canada Challenge. Thank you for the extra shows, guys.
Yeah, the Canadian dollar is pretty pathetic right now. Every dollar American can like buy me a meal. So
let's see. We have Grease Monkey 58, $17. Way deep. Keep it up. Appreciate you, Grease Monkey. Julie JN, $10. Love this new time slot and all your knowledge, gentlemen. Thank you. Well, thank you, Julie.
Thanks.
Looks like Crystal Anon gifted 5 subscriptions to Badlands. Thank you, Crystal.
How does that work? How does the subscriptions work? What does that mean?
So a subscription, I think, is it's like you pay $5 a month, and I think in exchange you get to watch like whatever channel you subscribe to, you get to watch without commercials. Because otherwise, my understanding is that if otherwise you get like commercials every couple of minutes on Rumble, I don't know. But you can gift subscriptions, so people can like gift $20 in subscriptions, which are 4 subscriptions, and then Rumble will just randomly give it to 4 people in the chat. And so it'll say this person has a subscription, this person has So if you got gifted a subscription, test drive it, let us know what you think, and maybe you'll sign back up for to do it on your own or pay it forward. So
I'm noticing that a number of people have mentioned in the chat. I was just scanning through it. That there's a relationship between the black cube and Saturn. Yeah, I've also kind of brushed up against that as well in my research. That if that's true, that would also add some coloring to the thing in Mecca. Which is another weird item. But Saturn being Kronos, being the god, the wasting god that eats his children. There is a strange fixation with Saturn amongst a lot of occult circles too, like Aleister Crowley.
And they do that thing with the rope. Like the thing with the rope is weird, right? So like connected to the black cube thing, because sometimes they'll wear the black cube on their arm, and they they take the black tether and they wrap it around their arm, like down to their finger. And I don't know what it's supposed to symbolize. It's supposed to symbolize something. I don't know what it symbolizes, but it all, I don't know. But certainly that wasn't part of the religion, I don't think, 2,000 years ago. I think that's a more recent development.
I wonder. Probably.
Yeah. So Kellis, $25. Great information. Thanks goes to Matt. Thank you, Kellis. Mrs. Real Freedom Fighter. Mrs. Rhea Freedom Fighter, $5. Miss Rise of Tires, correct. Ghost looks like a squire tonight.
That was worth $5.
That was definitely a very well spent $5. Crystal Anon, $5. Never trust a man in a small hat. Touche. Lopat67, $10. Thank you for surprising me with perverted sacred geometry tonight. Truly, nothing is sacred. Yes, there is perverted sacred geometry, and it is all over the place.
Yeah,
especially in Washington D.C. All right, and then real quick, let me just make sure we didn't get any boosts.
Yeah, the fact that they retooled that Washington Monument, or the fact that it was even built in the first place, people think that that's something that would have made George Washington happy, and I really don't think it would have. I don't think any real patriot was happy to see that symbol, like the phallus symbol, right there in Washington as the symbol to Washington. And then the fact that they put the Vesca Pisces like 2 years after 9/11, right when they start bombing Iraq to the Stone Age. Yeah. Like I do see that as well as both phallic, because it's like this. In occult circles, there's this idea of the right hand and left hand path utilizing sort of masculine energy of the imposing will, penetrating power, and then the female energy of sex and envelopment, right? So they play with these weird ideas in a very, when it gets geopolitical, it gets disgusting. And a big part of this conflagration of creative destruction, it's like fusing opposites, right? Like maleness, femaleness, fuse it into one, create androgyny, the sacred, the profane, fuse it together, right? Killing and creation, sex and murder. Somehow, the closer you can get them into proximity, the more divine you are, the more released you are of the shackles of good and evil that permeate the teachings of the Bible and things like that. And you want to break free of those shackles. So the fact that they put that Vesca Pisces right there as they're bombing Iraq, doing like another phoenixing ritual, as far as I see it, right? Like you're just taking a society and just wearing it down like they're doing to the Gaza, in order to somehow rebuild out of the ashes something completely, that nobody would have ever have gone along with, in a sane period. There's something to it. There's definitely something to it. I don't fully know how to think about it. I don't know that many people who do know how to think about this thing in a rational way, but there's definitely a connection that's worth thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so there is a boost. Jay, I see what happened here, so I'll read both your boosts. The first one, for $1, he says, I just sent a $20 boost to you guys about guests for the show, but it went to the whole company by mistake. Not sure if you can still read it. Thank you for all you two do. The world is a much better place because of it. And then the $20 boost, which is to the whole company. No worries there, Jay. I don't know if you've heard of Susan Kokinda or Barbara Boyd of Promethean Action and their YouTube channel, Friends of LaRouche. They understand the British rule today, and Trump's push to dismantle it could be great guests to have on for a show. Are you familiar with those people, Matt?
I used to work with them.
I thought you might.
Ago. Yep.
Awesome. We'll have to talk. We'll talk offline and see if they'd be good guests. But Jay, thanks for the boost. Appreciate your support, everyone. Please hit the thumbs up on this. Share the video and continue to support Badlands. We will be back tomorrow. I'll be on tomorrow. Geopolitics. I'm actually having our buddy Joaquim on tomorrow on Geopolitics. Yeah,
good.
So
excellent.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick his brain a little bit on some more of the Azerbaijan stuff. So
fantastic. I'll be watching. That's cool.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right. Man. Thank you, Gordon. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you all on Breaking History again Wednesday, 12 o'clock, a regular slot, and one more Thursday night coming up next week. So keep those two items on your. I would just throw out a little promotion too. I host a show called Pluralia Dialogos. I do this every 2 weeks, every Sunday at 11 a.m. Go to pluraliadialogos.com and you could see those shows every time that they stream. You could participate in the live streams. And we're just trying to build more of an awareness to the platform and to the show. This week we'll have Caleb Malpoint and Combe Carpentier, an esteemed professor of geopolitics in France, who will be speaking and sharing their thoughts. So anybody, like I said, who wants to come on, just reach out to me or go to that website. And thank you, Gordon. Thank you, everybody. Till next time.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.